You spoke, and we listened. Next month, we will launch a LinkedIn series entitled Bigger Than You Think. Our one-on-one conversations with so many leaders here in Atlanta are designed to spotlight their unique stories and perspectives. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a kind rating. Like many of you, I still remember those teachers that had a positive impact on my educational upbringing. Today's episode is special because we spend time with Virginia Commonwealth University professor Carlton Good. Dr. Good taught me the importance of cultivating relationships. He's the reason Ali and I share a friendship, and he's made a career helping young men of color find their way on campus and beyond. Sit back and enjoy. Welcome to another episode of the Somebody's Son podcast, where biting your tongue is never allowed. Young men battle with the pressures of manhood every day. Each episode, we tackle topics that focus on worth, actions, and relationships. Our goal is simple: help men win the war with themselves.
You were telling us your class got extra credit for the podcast?
Yeah. So they, you know how they miss class sometimes, and the college students miss class, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course, it's, they want A's because of, the GPA. And so in order for them to get an A, I gave them an opportunity to do extra credit. Mm-hmm. And so some people did, they reviewed like 3 podcasts, some reviewed 4, some reviewed 1, and then they had to give a 2-page paragraph on feedback.
2 pages.
I'm sorry, 2 paragraphs.
2 paragraphs. For this show.
For this show, yeah. And so that's how I said I would send it to you.
Oh, I gotta read that.
Yeah, some of it was good though, man. And even some of them said that I'm going back in and watch the rest of them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and so they, you send me a list of them, or Chris sent me a list of the ones.
Lang.
Yeah.
So shout out to Lang. Lang couldn't be here.
Yeah.
We love Lang. He will always be somebody's son. Even if he's not in episodes or some episodes for the early part of this season, he will definitely be on for some of the other ones. But yeah, shout out. Lang always taking the lead on stuff like that.
Yeah, he did. We was in the car, and I was like, man, this would be a great idea for me to get to my students for extra credit. Yeah. And he said, could you do that? I was like, yeah.
That's amazing.
That's what you put it to work, and they was watching it, man. And so with all 5 classes, you're talking about 9 to 8 men of color.
Wow.
And so all 9 of them got them. So
98.
98, but I don't know how many really need extra credit. But I have 5 classes in one semester, and so whoever picked it up, and so I downloaded it and I put it in the folder, and I sent it to Donald, but he just can't open them. I couldn't
open it.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So first, I want to ask you two, how does it feel that what we're creating is being viewed by the people that we started the show for, right? Like we talked about young men battle with the pressures of manhood.
Yeah.
And that's why we started the show. And I didn't know that it was going to come that quickly, but we're directly, whether it's an assignment or something like that, it's falling on the ears of the people that we wanted to hear. How does that feel?
How does it feel? It's humbling for so many reasons because of the impact this man has had on my life. And we'll dig into that. So humbling is probably the first thing that comes to mind. I think the second thing, though, is it reminds me that it's worth it. It's worth it, right? So, like, we could be spending our time doing a host of other things, and there's plenty of men that look like us at our different age groups that are choosing to invest their time differently. I'm not going to say irresponsible. I'm just going to say differently. But to be able to see young men, you said 98 men of color, which means they look like us, for them to be able to have even an opportunity to listen to our content as a means of helping them get ahead educationally is worth it. It makes the investment worth it. Especially when my man's on the buildings. He owned the building, so that's amazing. We own the equipment, which is amazing. We own the content, which is amazing. And those things are to be celebrated, which is why I keep giving you your flowers. Mm-hmm. But most importantly, it lets me know the investments you made in us are worth it. You saw something in me I didn't see in myself. Mm-hmm. Real talk.
No, I believe you.
And so for now that you got students that are able to learn and benefit from content we're creating, this is still from your tree. We are branches from your tree. So it's worth it. And I hope that means for you as a professor, you could have chose any other profession. You could have chose to work at any other university. You could have chose Lord knows, like, you've had your own life challenges that I'm both fortunate to see you go through from a supportive perspective, but also fortunate to see you overcome. But in order for you to like continue to pour into us, like this guy is on campus. We were laughing. He came to visit me in Atlanta. We were laughing because one of my mentors in real estate is 15 years older than me. And so legitimately, shout out to Ken. Ken watches the podcast too. And Ken is white, which is why I love him even more, because the way he advocates for me and gives me wisdom, you couldn't tell that he's not part of the Black community because he cares about me that much. And our kids get along and they're close friends, and so is our wives. But Ken was laughing. We're in his house, multi-million-dollar house, and we in his house, and he's like, yo, you call me an old man because I'm 15 years older than you. How you feel to be an old man because you're 15 years older than him?
Yeah, we're sitting there having a good time, and he essentially tells Donald, like, and it's funny because Donald told me, he's like, when my kid talks to you, he's going to call you the same thing. Yeah. You're like, oh man, you know what I mean? So, I mean, it's crazy to think about. It's like what we talked about earlier. First, I didn't get your perspective on that, right? Is that a lot of the things you said, and Chris had a lot of gems last season, bro. So a lot of the things you said is...
Agreed.
Exactly. It's being heard by people. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Man, one of the things for me, I just want to give a big shout out to VCU, man. Like, our content is being circulated in the classrooms that groomed us, right? Like, VCU, like
I'm getting chills from that.
Yeah, man. Like, we don't even. I'm starting to further appreciate how VCU had an impact on us as a whole, just as an institution. I know that institutions are going through a lot right now, but the fact that we are all products or contributors to that institution, and we're able to have our content distributed and shared amongst the people who are in there now, like the students in there now, for me, it's a big accomplishment because I did a lot of growing and learning at VCU, not just, educationally, but socially. I think I kind of woke up at VCU just because of the interactions I've had with people. So I just want to celebrate the fact that our common bond as, people of color is one, but also we have an institution that we can share. And I would hope that the institutions like VCU at the higher level can appreciate this as much as I do, as much as we do at the ground level. So I want to make sure, maybe a bit of homework for you is see how we can get, more, larger support from VCU to see how we can maybe have a live podcast one day. Maybe we can set up seminars or to take from Donald in the past. I know he had the Motivated Man conference back when he was an undergrad. How can we bring that back? How can we use this platform in our relationship with VCU? How can we give back on a larger scale, right? So VCU, I'm calling you out in a good way.
There you go.
In a good way.
One of the things I want to comment on is that a lot of our guys that come to VCU come from single parent homes, and they don't have those father figures or those figures like you all, even you as a student. And one of the comments the students wrote, wow, they care. For them to take time out to have a conversation about me. Because, when they live their everyday lives and maybe come from a single parent home, and that, that father may have not been there, and a group of men talking about the development and their growth, it's an inspiration to them. Yeah. Not even an inspiration, make them want to work even harder to sit in those seats that you're sitting in right now. Yeah. So it means a lot, and I can't wait till you read some of them now.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And we are them. I think that's why we care. We are them. My father is a phenomenal grandfather. He would tell you he was not what he wanted to be as a father, right? Being in and out. But as a grandfather, he has found ways to channel his efforts that he wish he would have made as a father. He's definitely channeling them as a grandfather. But we were those kids. Like, we are those kids. Me and Chris didn't have fathers in the house. So part of the reason we care is because we are them. I think the other reason why, and I've been able to come back to your classes for almost a decade now and talk. And I appreciate you giving me a platform and an opportunity to speak to them. And in many cases, they're not even convenient Because I remember flying all the way from Houston one time.
You sure did. I remember
just
that.
to speak to your class and hop right back on a plane to go close.
Wow.
At no cost.
At an acquisition at no cost. Yeah, I wasn't gonna say that, but since you did, you're right. I paid for it myself. But I had to close the acquisition. But I'm willing to be there for you, Carlton, because you saw something in me, and I know how that helped mold me into the man I am today. More importantly, that means you continue to see that in other children or young men. And for me, that's how I view it. It's okay, yeah, it's an inconvenience. I might have to wake up early and, switch time zones twice, but who cares? Like, who knows if something I may say or something Carlton underscores, highlights, and bold for that kid, if he does that for them, they could be where I'm at. So that's what make it worth it. And I know Lang, we love Lang. Lang does the same thing. I know Lang's been speaking to your kids as well. Meeks does the same thing. So it's like, I'm not saying that they had the exact same situation I did, but I know when we come back, we view many of the kids in your classroom the way we feel like we were once viewed. And that's what makes it worth it. Like, it makes it priceless.
We had a educator on here that we've spoken to, and
Vario Hawkins.
Yeah.
Vario, what's up? We know folk.
And yes, yeah. And it was a phenomenal episode, but I've been in Mr. Good's developing men of color class. I took it last year. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that's where we met. Yep. And that's a whole nother, that's its own podcast episode. We talk about that. Yeah. We tackled that on what was the Creating Gravy. Yeah. So, but I want to say this because I want to preface a question is, I've been in the class and in all of my time at VCU, it was my favorite class. And I didn't really have that many courses, not at all actually. I haven't had a course yet other than the Developing Men of Color class, where every week I felt like, and y'all know I showed up late to this. I never showed up late to the class, bro. And we wanted to stay more. Like, the kids, I made so many friendships, but aside from that, I've never felt like a professor cared about me more than Mr. Good did, right? And I know each individual in the class who's taken the class and who's met Mr. Good can also say that, right? So, we talk often now because we run an org together. He's the advisor, and I'm the president for the student organization that ended up was a spinoff pretty much from his class, right?
That's amazing, man.
And we've been able to do incredible things. We talked about mentoring all the time on this podcast, and I tell them about the story about Benford Middle.
Oh, really?
And we do that through our organization, right? So, it's been incredible, but I say that to say this. So, the class stemmed from, I know you're doing African American studies, right? And what's your master's in right now?
My master's in student development.
Student development, and then you're in school right now for what?
My doctorate.
Your doctorate in?
Higher ed leadership.
Right. So Mr. Good hits me like, after mentoring, he hit me up. Where are you on your way to? What conference?
The one in Florida, Student Success Conference.
Student Success Conference in Florida. And he asked me to write there's no credit involved with this. He just said write me a paragraph about mentoring that we've been doing, right?
Okay.
And I wrote probably the most emotional, heartfelt paragraph that I've ever written. It would end up being like a page or so. Spinning off of conversations that we've had and reflecting on that. And I was able to pour that into a paper, and apparently Mr. Good read it, and people were starting to take notice of things that we were doing as an org and the things that he's been working on. But I say all that to say this is that without the work he's been doing, you mentioned it, like the tree, right? If Mr. Good, it's funny because earlier we talked about foundations, right? And how other people's actions affect so much more than just themselves. And they affect so much more going into the future, right? Like different people can sit here and have a podcast episode or say that I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't met this dude. You know what I mean? So what made you, I always wanted to ask you this. It just so happens that the cameras are rolling now, but I always wanted to ask you this.
Let's go.
Is that what made you start the class, for one? Because I remember Donald telling me, like, bruh, you better be grateful because
we didn't have that.
We didn't have that on campus. So what started the class, first and foremost? And then I'll ask the second question that I have after you answer that.
Well, most of my research is on retaining African American males in college, right? So I went to HBCU, Shaw University, and going to Shaw University, the all-black college, I seen guys doing that thing and things like that sort. Then I went to the University of Iowa, and the black students there, especially men, they were just lost. And the number of us graduating is extremely low compared to any other ethnicity group. And even worse when you look at the black female and the black male. The females are way up here, and we are here. And so when I got to VCU, wasn't nobody paying attention to that. I said, look, this is a problem. And so as a matter of fact, I had to sneak the class in because, at VCU, they say that, you just can't have a class if it's not open to everybody. So I had to get an override in. And so it started there. And then I started seeing the results of it. But people like Donald that I used to see and kept on mentoring. And I put the same things inside the class. One of the things I'll never forget when you came to my office one day, that was kind of wild in school.
I know, look, there's been a lot of growth in my life.
And of course, he always was articulate and always speaking well. And he said in my office one day, something was going on. I was like, look, man, your problem is that you just hit people and run. You're not building those solid relationships. What you can do with those solid relationships and the people that you connect with is just crazy. And so seeing him and seeing the others, the way they develop and doing it, I was like, this thing needs to be spread a little bit more. Everybody need a piece of it. Not only that, they can come back and see people like you and say, look, there's a mirror. It's like, damn, that dude look like me. For real, I can do that?
Yeah.
Some of the dudes come from neighborhoods or the father's not there. It's like, I've never seen that before. I don't think I can do it. But once you start talking and see people like you and even a student like Ali, wow, it's possible. Yeah. And their eyes light up, man, and just getting the reward of seeing success.
Yeah. Dude, you gave the G-rated version. He basically said, you don't cultivate relationships and you're not fulfilling the potential that you have when you choose not to do that. And I took that as a personal challenge.
It was hard for me to say that, like.
Oh, I can only imagine. Yeah. Especially at that time, I was way more stubborn and hard-headed.
He was a rascal.
I was. Yeah, I was. Real talk. Thank God for growth. But it forced me to have to confront my own issues. And I love the fact we talked to my buddy Kamal, and so many times older men in our community, we call them OGs or old heads, they give you the wrong nuggets. And they force you to, those nuggets influence the way you navigate life. Lucky for me, you gave me the right nuggets. Season 2, the beauty behind season 2, what somebody said, it's all built off relationships. I got people pulling up. Chris got people pulling up. Ali got people pulling up. Yeah. Garrett, even being here, not even being from Virginia, like the folks that folks are seeing on season 2 is because of relationships. I would have never placed my emphasis on relationships if it wasn't for you. So the influence you're having on those kids, even if you don't see the fruit immediately, what you're planting is still worth it. And I think a lot of times people don't realize that, because when you plant something, it has to go underground and be hidden before it starts to bloom. And so many times it may not bloom as quick, so people feel like the planting wasn't worth it. And I'm here to give you all your flowers while you're here, which is why I'm so glad you're here. You've planted in a lot of men that I know. Yeah. Particularly my fraternity and my line, or our fraternity, but my line, we look up to you, bro. And we are better men because of you. Wow. Yeah. We really are.
I think it's important to point out, we had Devario on here earlier, but from a higher level education perspective, how important do you think it is that courses like this are, like, how important do you think that it is that courses like this are normal in college campuses? Because you mentioned scale, right, for the developing men of color class. Personally, I'll tell you, it's the best class I've ever taken, right? And I know a lot of the kids can say the same. So I agree with you. I think that more people should be able to benefit from it, right? Because this is not a problem that's local here in Richmond or in Petersburg, right? Or kids who just attend Virginia Commonwealth University, right? Like you mentioned, you went to University of Iowa, and you also saw that it was a problem there,
yes,
right?
Yes, it is.
So how important do you think higher education plays a role in, the future of, African-American men? Because that's pretty much what you're working on.
Right. I would even yield that to you, only because you mentioned while you was at school, you went to class and things of that sort, but the development for you as a man took place outside the classroom.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things for me, I just appreciate I didn't know this was an actual class at VCU. I'm learning this now.
It's a real class.
So this is fantastic for me.
It's a credit grade and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And that's amazing because you sought an override to get this course, which means you put your own professional career in jeopardy, right? Like credit to VCU, other institutions may have saw that in a different way, and things can pan out a whole lot different. So the fact that you stuck your neck out for kids like us, I appreciate that. I didn't take the class, but I really appreciate that. But secondly, I think that is very necessary in school because a lot of people get lost in the shuffle, right? I'm a product of Richmond Public Schools, right? From kindergarten to 12th grade, Richmond Public Schools. My younger brother, he went to St. Christopher's. As a functioning adult now, I can see the differences in the education that my brother got from 6th grade to 12th grade than what I had when I received when I was in that same age range, just kind of where he is mentally. So that's just from an education perspective, but I appreciate and I understand the value in going beyond just academics within an institutional setting, right? Because that's where you can have more control, more consistency, more reach for people to be able to see that there are possibilities to strive greater, right? Look at Knight, for example. He started off as a young firecracker and he's matured to be a wonderful young man through the help of your class, which you just mentioned. But
Well, I wasn't in the class.
Oh, okay. But
class started after me, but because of the person.
Because of the person,
yes.
So
yes.
It all ties in. Like you're that foundation, but you're going, in my opinion, above the call of duty. Like I'm pretty sure that your outreach to Donald and then you creating a college course may not be in your job description. It's right? It's not your job description.
It's definitely not.
But you're able to leverage your position, your acumen, your knowledge, all of your studies into the development of a course that impacts people outside of just classroom education, but with the support inside the infrastructure of an institution. And I think that's amazing. Like, and I feel so proud to be a Ram right now because the fact that they've allowed or, supported this vision. For me, I would have loved to benefit from this class when I was at VCU. I think we had like University 101, which was how to write a resume or whatever we did in that class. It was an easy grade. I don't even know what we did. But this is something that I think is a lot more impactful and a lot more powerful for us. And I know you can't be exclusive in your classes, but maybe this is a good opportunity for others who are interested in the development of people of color, men of color, and kind of seeing things, like kind of peeking behind the veil. Maybe it's a good opportunity for others who aren't people of color to get involved in those classes because proximity is important, right? Yep. We grow this country. We're meant to be comfortable. Everyone wants to be what makes them be where things are comfortable for them, and sometimes that comfort level it pretty much distances you from the proximity of people who aren't like you, right? So exactly. You have that distance between you, and it's hard for you to sympathize or understand how others see the world because of just pure distance, right? So the fact that this class was created, secondly, this class is dedicated to the development of men of color, and thirdly, that anybody can actually sign up for the class, right?
Like freshman,
yeah. I want to see. I want to first continue to nurture at the program how it is now, but how do we reach that third level of? It maybe not be just class, maybe it's another format, but how do we reach that next level of bonding and relationship across cultures, but within the institutional setting, right? Because we have to. And I want to make sure I say this correctly. We all grew up in our different areas, different walks of life, and then we all come to one institution and expect to get an education. Book side is yes, that's the main portion of it. But there's also the social and cultural side that I think the institution's responsibility is to help nurture those as well.
Right.
How do you think that's something that we can eventually get to in our society, or at least within the institutions? Do you think that there's a capacity or space for us to reach beyond the classroom within the institutional framework and teach more, more cultural? I want to make sure I'm phrasing right. Teach more of learning about others that aren't like you.
Crossroads.
How can institutions foster that environment?
Well, I think so. So my class is mainly for freshmen. But many times, as a freshman male coming to an institution as big as VCU, I don't even know who I am, right? And before I jump into a whole other culture, I'm gonna lose myself, not even find out who I am first. You know, so first, you may be from Northern Virginia, and I may be from the South Side of Richmond. Two completely different environments, right? Completely. You Northern Virginia, you don't even know that there's shooters in my neighborhood. You don't even feel empathy for me. You see it on the news, you be like, oh, that's cool. Yeah. But if you can relate to that, and I'm your boy like that, it hit me, and I'm from Virginia. So we got to get that together first. And then once we do that, we can step out. So we come together as a class from Northern Virginia, from the ghetto, from the rich kids. And man, we have those rap sessions, as you know.
Different.
Those college students, man, they be in that battling. Really? Man. Yes. The thing about it, we don't have a space for a conversation like that among men. You know what we talk about? Girls. I'm gonna get lit tonight.
Speak on it.
You know what I'm saying? But for real, as a man, I'm hurting inside, bro. And where I'm gonna take this joint too. Yeah. Because everybody in my classroom don't look like me, so you can't relate to me.
Yeah. Nah, the rap, by far the rap session was like the most incredible thing I've ever done in a class. Like I remember this. We argued. And then at the end, everybody was just like, because we all look alike in the class, right? But we argued about the topics that we were talking about. And then at the end, we're just like, yo, this is a pretty good conversation, bro. You want to go out to eat? Like, you know what I mean? That's the kind of thing that he wants to try to foster and develop first. And, go ahead. What were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, so two things. First thing you talked about was we don't have a safe space for that. I agree with you. I also think as men, what I commend you for is for creating that space. And that's what we hope this is that it is a very intentional created space for those that want that and for those who may not even know they need it. Because a lot of it is a lack of awareness. For Black men in America, we talked about this with my guy Rodney, we're not even, there's so much expectations placed on us, and we have to navigate a world that's built against us. And then we also got to be husbands, fathers, and like we don't even got time to deal with how we feel.
And plus still look like we got together, right?
The closest thing
that's
to
exactly
this,
what it is.
Yeah. And you still got to be able to look through.
Yeah.
So the closest thing to this, and shout out to my man Marcus Harvey out of Atlanta, the closest place for us to get this is the barbershop. Now, most people say, well, you can get it at church. That's not true. The church is hit or miss.
And you're scared sometimes to open up about church. And you're scared
because other people aren't being that intentional with their vulnerability.
Man, what can I say?
So I commend you for that. I think the second thing is what Chris talked about, what is the proximity. How do you create these types of spaces for people of color and people that are not people of color where they too can learn? Because we do learn by experiences. And I firmly believe the reason why we haven't seen significant gains since the Kings, the John Lewises, the C.T. Vivians, and folks from that era, or even prior, Sojourner Truth, W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, is because we haven't focused on proximity. We have to focus on proximity. How do you create a space where people with differences can come together and walk away having a greater appreciation for the full fabric of the community? How do you do that? You've done that for people of color, right? Rap sessions, you've done that. Like, dang, I'm from 7-5 and my man from Southside, my other guy, he from McLean. We got different situations and we might not even agree on all these situations, which is a beautiful thing, but I can still appreciate him as a man and walk away learning something. How do we do that for other people? And I personally believe that's the future of higher education. The one place where you can take 30,000 different kids, young adults, from all facets of the community, bring them to one place. I tell him this all the time. The beauty is you got 30,000 people in one centralized location, preset for 4 years. What?
Yeah,
you can't find that anywhere. Those
right.
types of social hubs are not being created in the community. So I think the future of education is creating that proximity in an intentional way. So I'm glad you touched on that from a framework perspective.
So do you think? No. I was just gonna say, do you think, as it stands right now, the way that higher education is, they haven't been creating that kind? Because it sounds like it shouldn't be up to the student, right, to come and have to go and meet everybody and do all these and have all these conversations and do it right. So, do you think that as it stands right now, colleges aren't creating those kinds of environments?
So I think they are creating them. They're doing it unintentionally.
Hit a point.
Yeah.
Carleton is very intentional in saying, I'm going to curate a space for men of color to come together, and you can bring your wounds, your burdens, your wins, your successes, your thoughts, your pains. We're going to find a way to come together. And not only am I going to pour into you to make you better, but you also have a free space for you to share that and express that. And you're not going to be judged. You're not going to feel less than. You're not going to be less of a man afterwards. He's very intentional in that. Colleges have done a great job creating a space for diverse and different backgrounds to come together. They've nailed that.
They've also done a good job of keeping them separate as well.
Exactly.
But they haven't, that's what I'm saying.
Which is true.
They
Most
haven't been
definitely.
intentional in creating that proximity. So that, yes, they're there. Part of my problem with people that say they don't like the system works. The educational system works. The prison system works. Policing works. These systems work, and they're creating the very results they were designed to create. Don't say the system doesn't work. The system does work. You need to change the system.
It just doesn't. It doesn't fit.
If you want to be able to create that proximity he was talking about, you got to be as intentional as Carleton, or as intentional as DeVario as an educator. If you're not being that intentional, then the system will continue to create the divided spaces that may be diverse in face,
Or in building.
building.
But separated
Exactly.
out. And this is something that I think that we need to challenge the leaders of these higher education institutions.
I agree.
If they look at education as a whole and the amount of access that people have, college is, I think it's too soon to say it's on the fringes, but it can implode. The college system can implode because the access to information is so great now.
I've had conversations with big internal stakeholders within, I'm not going to divulge any names, and they're saying, man, I don't know, looking forward into the future, access to information is so crazy.
You can't hoard it anymore.
Exactly.
Right? So now we have these places with enrollment of 30,000 people of all different places all across the world. But now we don't necessarily need to be here to get the same information you're trying to certificate me for. Right?
Exactly.
But how can we use those same institutions, the resources that these institutions have, to stitch together these different fabrics of community into one big quilt that we can all wrap ourselves in?
Agreed.
Right.
Like,
Agreed.
and if I'm a president of I don't know the politics of higher education. That's something that's a separate conversation. But if there is an ability to influence the politics of higher education and add a bit more strategy to how education looks in the next 20, 30, 40 years, even 10 years, these are the conversations that should be happening at those tables, because it's no longer you have to hit this many credit hours to learn this. You can learn this now in an all-nighter on YouTube, right?
Exactly.
So what else is college? What other benefits will college bring to society as a whole?
Right.
I think the biggest problem that we have is the proximity thing is in distance. When you go to college, you're all in the same place, but we still separate it out.
Right.
That's not true proximity, though.
It's not. Yeah, that's what he's saying.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Like just because
Agree.
Proximity is not just distance, but because most institutions are set up. Yeah, we're all in this. We're all within a 2-mile radius of VCU, but we're still separate. How can institutions break that separation down and start to foster more of a collective environment that allows people to get experiences from everyone across the board?
Right.
We need to start having a conversation at those stakeholder tables.
And it forces them to look at the college campus differently.
Yeah.
This is no longer a beacon of just education. It is a social hub.
It is.
And how do I facilitate proximity and engagement between diverse beings at my social hub?
Right.
They do that, people would be willing to pay a premium to have that. And those that may not be willing to pay a premium, businesses like the one I work for, we would place a premium on that because now when they enter the workforce, they know how to interact with other people of diverse backgrounds.
And if you look at the supply chain as a whole, like the supply chain of individuals of the workforce.
Human capital.
That's the direction that we need to go in because there are too many people who work in corporate America, wherever, I don't want to name it. There are too many people that work that their first interaction with other people is that moment. It's either sometimes in college, but I was in a fraternity and I stayed in the dorm and I happened to, for me, VCU was all black until I went to class.
Right.
VCU was only not majority black for me when I was in class. Outside of that, everyone stayed in the dorm. Majority was people of color. Most people I saw in Schaefer were people of color. Like when I went to the library, when I sat down in classes, when I saw the diversity. But the infrastructure is there. Yeah. We need to be able to create the program around these social hubs. The social hub that colleges already have. How do we maximize that to better integrate different cultures, different communities together?
Well, I think we can do that. We also, a couple of years ago, we had a second part of the class, which was for sophomores and upperclassmen. And from the sophomores to upperclassmen, we started moving into that area.
Okay.
Right? So we don't have the sophomore class right now, the sophomore, juniors, and seniors. So that can move to the area. My first thing is to get you connected first, find out who you are, and then let's move out that space, in the second class. Yeah. But this young man, he can do it himself with DMC. We have an organization that consists of over 100 men.
Yeah, DMC, what does DMC mean?
Developing Men of Color, man.
Gotcha.
Yeah. No, we have, it's crazy, bro. It's been a crazy, I took over as president. How long has it been now?
Since February, maybe?
Since February. And it's been crazy. I have a phenomenal team, too. Obviously, I get to work with Mr. Good. Adam, shout out to Adam. Thomas, Dom, man, Milton Coleman, Trey. Those guys are phenomenal, bro. But the thing that we're trying to take a look at as an organization is, and this is what I was going to say earlier, is that the thing about thinking about college from that perspective of a social hub is that it forces them to view the world differently, right? Because the problem is bigger than just separation on campus, right? It actually starts because there's separation in hometowns and because there's separation in elementary schools and middle schools and all these places, right? So as an organization, I feel like it's beneficial for us because we don't really have to take a look at just the people that are involved in college campuses. Like we've been, doing things in the community and, providing mentors with people. We've been connecting people. Like we've been doing events for everything, trying to get our members hooked with internships and building their resumes and things like that.
I think those are all great things. And I don't want to minimize the contributions that individuals like you, Mr. Good, and classes and organizations can make.
I know where you're going, though. I agree with you.
The institutional level is how we're going to get the scale.
Exactly. Right. That's what I agree with you. Absolutely.
Support.
Yeah, the institutional level is how we create the most change. And to your point,
I was agreeing. I was about to make that point is that, not to say it's a shame, but it's terrible that it has to be private individuals who have to think like this in order to change the world, right? What is it about large infrastructures where it seems like they're missing the main points in the big pictures?
Yeah, well,
Huh? So, but, it started first. All of it started with students, though. if you look at the changes all over the country, it's starting a lot on college campuses.
University of
so
Richmond.
those many people in that organization can force the institution at hand to do what we want them to do make it a little bit more diverse.
Is that how that should operate?
Motivated.
I believe so. I subscribe to this thought process of continuous improvement.
Right.
Am I a better husband today than I was 5 years ago? My wife would tell you without a clue. Am I a better friend today than I was 5 years ago? Absolutely. Am I a better fraternity brother than I was 5 years ago? Absolutely. That doesn't mean I can rest on my laurels. That doesn't mean that I've arrived. And to your point about big companies, the problem with big companies or big institutions, whether they're for-profit or nonprofit, is a lot of times they rest on their laurels. VCU recognizes they were one of the most diverse universities in the country.
Yes.
I remember when we surpassed George Mason for a student population. I remember when people were praising them for being an inner city school, similar to Georgia Tech in Atlanta. It's not enough.
Yep.
You've accomplished this. Great. What a phenomenal achievement. Continuous improvement. And I think to your point, the dilemma with large organizations is if I'm profitable, if my attendance rate or my admission rate is high, if my key performance indicators, which we do at business, if those things are positive and in the green, why would I drive to more continuous improvement? And the reason they should is because if they don't, tomorrow you won't be. 1950s, Fortune 500, go look at the list.
Yes.
And then go look at the Fortune 500 list today.
Many of them are
not
1990.
They're not even in existence. Why? Because at one point they made a great list. They had great returns, great dividends, and they rested on their laurels. And for me, this is my issue. Like Wells Fargo CEO, I'm glad he openly said, I don't know where to find black talent. You know what he told me? I never had proximity. Proximity is just not distance. Proximity in mind. I remember the first time I ever found out about multiple sclerosis. My pastor's wife was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I had never heard of the disease a day in my life. Since then, I have always contributed to multiple sclerosis. Why? My proximity changed. Somebody I knew got it. My line brother, Aaron Brown, who's a doctor. His mom had Hodgkin's lymphoma. I remember I never knew what Hodgkin's lymphoma was. I know it because somebody I cared about created that proximity because I cared about them, right? Universities, large institutions have to do the same thing. If you truly care about diverse talent, create proximity, not just in distance, right? Create proximity in mind and heart and how you care. And we cannot believe or subscribe to this thought that a country that was built on segregation and integration that was forced, it makes sense for that system to be separate in caring, in mind, and in heart. It makes sense because all the other things, the system was created to keep the separate, and then once integrated, to be separate mentally in who you care about, or railroad tracks, living across the tracks. So now we have to be that much more intentional in doing what you're doing, which is why, again, man, I continue to think you're ahead of your time as an educator. The other thing that's humbling for me is that you have your own son. And so you didn't have to take the time for me. You could have continued to pour into your own son. And as a man who has his own son, I know what that feels like. I know what that feels like.
I appreciate you for wrestling with the Angels on this one, going against the big institutions to implement a class like this. I will say that the job is not done. The job is not done, and I'm hoping
Of course.
I'm hoping not your job in particular, but I would say
my job's not done.
Yeah, I know
His
your
job ain't done.
Your
Trust
job
me,
is not done.
I'll be the first one to tell him.
But the job of the institutions is not done. And I'm hoping that I'm a proud Ram. I've invested in Virginia Commonwealth University just like everyone else in this room has, and I'm willing to say I hope VCU feels that their job is not done yet.
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. But even just outside of that, just like on a whole scale, you know what I mean?
On a grander scale, but I'm talking to the Rams right now because we're all
that's
Rams
what your heart is, right?
Yeah.
Carlton, as a final word, because I know you were about to say something, so say that. But as a final word, what would you challenge other folks in similar seats that you sit in?
One, man, young men out here, they need help, and they're not gonna come up. We got an ego, especially young men. teenagers, they got an ego and they grew up whereas I got it. I don't need no help. So it's our job to reach out and be a little more aggressive. Most definitely. And don't give up, man. Don't give up. One of the things that we end up when we do a rap session, and this one question always hit home to me. So we go around the room. It was about 18, 19 guys in the room. And I say to them, if you had imagine you got a son. What is that one thing you would give to your son that's not material? One thing that he can stick in his back pocket and he can pull out when he's in middle school, high school, college, and marriage. What would that one thing that you would give to your son? And what I find out when I go around that circle is the things that they may be lacking or the things that's keeping them on top of that game currently. And if you either hear them young men talk, man, that's why I say it's so important for them to have that spaces. And if you say the same thing I'll say, me and you connected. You know, one may say that I'll give him my father. I want to make sure that I'm there for him, you know.
How do we answer that question?
Yeah, you know, what is that one thing you give to your son? Nothing material. Now, he's going through middle school soon, playing sports, you know what I'm saying? He's going to high school, he's going to college. Nothing material. What would you give to him? And those young men, when they spit that stuff out, man, I'm just in amaze, bro.
Wow, I need to sleep on that one.
Yeah, that's homework.
That's homework. We got to revisit that. So we need to call them good part two.
You know what the thing too I've noticed about, I definitely observed during one of the rap sessions is that you always asked if you could pick one person to have dinner with, who would you pick?
Dead or alive.
Dead or alive. And everybody...
And you don't know them.
Yeah. And everybody only picks, and of course it's black men there, right? So we typically have, like, there's Hispanic men too that join, right? But it's only about 5 or 6 answers, like, on average.
Yeah.
Right? So what does that say about our community, our...
Hopes.
Yeah, our hopes, our dreams.
More influence. They're
so common. Like, everybody's thinking about the same kind of things, right? Where's the diversity of thought?
Bringing, right? About the other folks.
You know what I mean? So,
yeah, it's I think a part of it also is access to information.
Of course.
If people, there's a gentleman that is based out of Austin, Robert Smith, and he got a lot of publicity because he paid for the student loan debt of an entire class, graduating class from Morehouse. And while I was excited to see him be celebrated, I was furious that it took that for him to get recognition. Because I don't know his story intimately, but I've studied his story enough where I applied to work for his company, just the equity partners. And while we've never met, he has no clue the impact he's had on me. It's half the reason we started a podcast. He is one of the major investors in Black History in 2 Minutes with Henry Louis Gates.
Wow.
And that influenced me because it taught me no matter what I might have accomplished in corporate or in business, I still have another responsibility, right? Beyond my son. And as the beneficiary of a man who did that in your way, beyond your son and pouring into me and Mike Hinton and Aaron Brown and so many others, Terry and Terrence, Ali, Mo, I've benefited from that. And so I have that responsibility. So I say all that to say this, continue doing what you're doing. If there's any way we can help amplify or accelerate the efforts that you're doing, let us know. Please. Time, talent, or treasure.
Please.
And continue to challenge us to be better versions of ourselves for continuous improvement, because whether you know it or not, you're making a difference.
Appreciate that. No, thank you guys. Most definitely.
You definitely are. I give him his roses too.
Got to. Gotta give him his roses.
I give him his roses pretty often.
I'm humbled just to be sitting on the same couch as you.
No, I'm the humble one, man.
Which you did is
nah,
not to
this
be
guy,
understated.
this-
So
There you go,
I just
man.
appreciate it. I really,
Trying to
I
get
really
like you.
appreciate
No,
it.
I'm just trying to get like you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Somebody Some podcast. We encourage you to share this episode with a friend. And remember, on this path called life, you are not alone. Thank you for watching. Until next time.
She liked the way that I finessed it.